This video is about the new LAOWA 12mm f2.8 zero-distortion lens. And if that sounds familiar, it's because about a year ago, I did a video on the then new LAOWA 10mm f2.8 zero-distortion lens. So a big part of this video is going to be comparing the two so you can decide which one's right for you. Now, before we get into that, I think you probably want to see some photos and videos shot through this lens. So we're going to start with that from my trip to Rovinj, Croatia. Now, before you get all excited, this is some big, massive, huge adventure. We literally took the bus there. It's that close. So let's take a look at some shots from Rovinj shot through the 12mm lens using the K&F Concept VND and CPL filter, which we'll talk more about later on. Always a car. All right, let's compare the 12 and the 10mm lenses. There's a lot of side-by-side specs here, so let's just run through them real quick. First off, both lenses are available for Canon, Sony, Nikon, and L mount. And just like before, both the Canon and the L mount are only available in manual focus, while the Sony and the Nikon can be got in autofocus. Also, you can get the lens in either a 5-blade aperture or a 14-blade aperture, but the 14 is always going to be manual focus. The 12mm lens has a 72mm front filter thread, while the 10mm, understandably a little bit bigger, has a 77mm front filter thread. So if you are locked in all at 72mm filters, oh baby, then you're going to want to keep that in mind. Check this out. This is the best pizza in Maribor. This is true Napolitani style pizza. Look at this crust. This is the good stuff. Obviously the 10mm is wider, and the actual field of view difference is the 12mm is a 122-degree field of view, while the 10mm is a 130.4 degree field of view.
PhotoJoseph, the food blogger.
They both have a very similar closest focusing distance. Not that it really matters, they're not macro lenses, but they do focus close. That's, there you go, you can see that. They are very similar in weight. The 12mm is only about 50 grams heavier than the 10mm, so basically same. Interestingly, the 10mm lens, which you would expect is a little bit harder to make, is actually a little bit better quality when you look at the MTF charts versus the 12mm. Now, I don't know that this is something that you would notice in regular day-to-day shooting, but on the charts, the 10mm is a little bit better around the edges. Surprisingly, there's only a $100 difference between the two. The 10mm is a $799 US lens, while the 12mm is a $699. So only a $100 difference. So really it comes down to what you need. Do you want that little extra width or not? But before you make a final decision, let's take a look at some shots comparing the two. I'm going to go around, shoot some videos, some photos for you, comparing the two so you can really compare them side by side. But before we do that, let's go back to Croatia so you can listen to past tense PhotoJoseph talk about this video sponsor, K&F Concept. And don't skip this. You're going to want to see why that VND plus CPL filter was so necessary and just how good of a job it did. Not a bad place, huh? 10 out of 10 would recommend. A quick timeout from the lens review to talk about this video's sponsor, and that is K&F Concept. As you might imagine, I am using their filters right now. In fact, this shot would not be possible as you see it without their filters. Not only is it the VND, allowing me to shoot at that coveted 180-degree shutter angle, but it is also a CPL. This is the K&F Concept ND 2-32 plus CPL filter, and I find this filter to be one of the most invaluable for places like this. Obviously, without the CPL, you're not going to get this rich blue sky. You're not going to get the water that you can just see right through. It's just going to be a big reflective mess, and you can see just the richness of the water here, the clarity of the water here. It's really quite incredible, and just overall how much better this looks when you have these filters on here. Also, this particular filter is a 77mm mount, but the lens that it's on is 72mm, and this is the 12mm focal length lens that I'm doing this video on. So it's a little ridiculously wide for a shot like this, but what are you going to do? Anyway, the filter itself is quite big. Bigger than the lens, which means it has a step-down ring on it, which means that the filter is actually sticking out a little bit farther from the lens than might normally be expected. And I think there's still no vignetting. I don't see any in the frame here. I don't see any vignetting at all. That's pretty awesome. So you can put a front mount filter on a lens this wide even stepped down and still not get vignetting. I love that. So I would recommend, I always recommend this, buy the biggest filter you would need, the biggest size you would need, so that you can step it down to other smaller lenses. Why buy 5 different filters when you can buy one larger one and then step it down to all the different lens sizes that you have? So that's my top recommendation for you. If you're shooting in a place like this, make sure you've got that CPL plus VND for video, or just a straight CPL for still photos. And of course you can use the CPL and VND for still photos as well. All right, I gotta go get back in the water. See ya. Great pizza. I'll be back soon. Ciao.
See you. Ciao.
First photo is with the 12mm lens. You can see, well, first of all, you can see my shadows are in the shot. What are you gonna do? It's that time of day. But look at the edges. I've kept the camera as perfectly vertical, perfectly true as possible, and you can see the width of the shot. Right now I'm gonna swap this out for the 10mm lens, and I need to swap out the filter as well so we can keep this consistent. And of course, since I'm shooting stills here, I don't need the ND filter, but the circular polarizer is certainly helpful. Same shot with the 10mm, and you can see that it's just a little bit wider there. So there you go. There's the difference between the 10 and the 12 for a shot like this. You can see the lines are still very true. Everything looks really clean. Overall, it's a really, really good lens. And it's just a little bit wider than the 12. We're back to the 12mm. You can see this photo here is now pointing upwards. We're getting this big jaunty angle, but now we're going to swap over to the 10mm and compare that. And now there's the shot with the 10mm lens, so a little bit wider, and you can compare the lines. All right, now we're rolling video with the 12mm. We are currently at f8 with the VND on there. The sun keeps changing around here, so the lighting on the next shot might be different, but this is what the 12mm looks like for video. And now this is video shot on the 10mm. Once again, keeping the camera as straight and true as possible. The lines should be nice and clean. And as you can see, we get just a little bit wider with that 10mm lens. All right, so we've got 2 different stills and a video clip shot with the 10mm versus the 12. Hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of the difference between the two. So now we just gotta wrap this thing up. Let me tell you my final thoughts on the 2 lenses, especially on the 12. So how do you compare these 2 lenses? I mean, they're both great lenses. They're both really, really wide, and they both are very true to their word of being zero distortion. The lens edges look really, really clean. So how do you decide between the 2? You could argue that the 10mm is almost too wide, unnaturally wide, but I'm sure a lot of people would say that about the 12 as well. Is the 12 a better travel lens than the 10? I mean, let's be honest, neither one of them are really ideal travel lenses. They're both a bit wide for that. But if that's your thing, you're into the widest shot ever, go for it. What about architecture or maybe interiors like real estate? Real estate, I could see where you might really want that 10. I used to shoot real estate and the widest I had was a 14. And there were plenty of times where I wished that I had something wider. Is 12 wide enough wider than a 14? Maybe not. Maybe it's worth going all the way to the 10. At a $100 difference, it's not the price that's going to make it or break it for you. I think you're just going to have to decide which one you like better. And hopefully, I've helped you make that decision. Or maybe I've just confused you more. In that case, sorry, man. Look at this place. This is crazy. It's so pretty here. I want to say, look, Dad, I bought a boat. But then it'd be like, I'd be pointing it, I don't know, I'm sure there's a rowboat over there somewhere that I could point at. But some nice boats over here.